Hey, it's Drybear. My latest Necromancer build is complete, so today we're going to go through the full guide, all the discoveries, the final version of the build through Paragon skills and gear and stats and all of that. And we'll talk about how to play the Bloodspeaker Necro. But first, today is the first day you can get access to the Druid transmog drops on my Twitch channel. Head over to twitch.tv/Drybear. Throughout the week, you will be able to watch the channel, watch the stream, and get access to the axe and the back attachment for Druid. These are only available through Sunday night. After that point, these won't be available anymore, and all you have to do is watch the stream to unlock these drops. 3 hours will give you the first drop, you claim it on Twitch, and then 3 hours will give you the second drop, and you're good to go. And there's only 2 weeks left to get the Primal Instinct mount. All you have to do is find a channel on Twitch that is on the list for the Supported Creator Program and gift 2 subscriptions to their channel. I am on that list, but you could certainly choose other channels as well, but just make sure you get this mount before the end of June, where it won't be available anymore. All right, let's talk about Bloodspeaker Necromancer. This build went through several evolutions where I tried out different iterations using thorns, using minion damage, using Army of the Dead, trying to use ultimates, how to integrate healing, and the core of trying to maintain this build was first inspired by the unique, the Death Speaker, which makes it so that when you Blood Surge, your minions also Blood Surge. After a bunch of testing, here is what I learned about this unique and how it affects the overall experience for using Blood Surge on Necromancer. Percent minion damage, as well as physical damage, and of course, blood skill damage does not really scale or affect the effect of the Blood Surge Nova on top of it. The highest damage output that I've been able to get with this build has been focusing on overpower. But what's cool about the Death Speaker unique that makes it so that when you Blood Surge, all of your minions Blood Surge is that every single one of the Blood Surges that come out is a separate source of damage. It can hit the same target. So when you and all of your minions are stacked on a boss or a big tanky target, all of the Blood Surges will be a separate source of damage. And what's even cooler than that is every single one of the mini Blood Surges, as well as your Blood Surge, can actually overpower. And so again, I've been able to one-shot bosses with this where all the minions are stacked together. I have a guaranteed overpower. I proc the overpower and the boss just instantly disappears because all 11 of those Blood Surges trigger at once. They all overpower and do massive amounts of damage. And what's cool about this too is you can just save up for that and get some tankiness out of it. Now, one of the challenges that I faced with this build was trying to keep minions alive in nightmare dungeons above level 60. They definitely have some survivability issues when you push higher and higher content, but I do believe this build can push about nightmare 75, and if it gets any buffs in the future, and I'm hoping that minion buffs are coming, it's possible that this build can go all the way until Mega Lilith, Uber Lilith, or 100, but as it stands right now, minions do need a little love. But I do think that this is the best version of the Death Speaker build, and probably the best version of Blood Surge in general, where you get tons of really good value. In this build is tons of survivability. I have about 13,000 life, but the way I've managed to keep my minions alive is by giving them damage reduction through Hardened Bones and Paragon, as well as Blood Orbs. There is a blood passive that gives you a portion of the healing you get from Blood Orbs gets sent to all of your minions instantly. So if you combine the damage reduction plus the healing from your Skeletal Priest when you use Raised Skeleton on a corpse and you're at max minions, plus the healing from Blood Orbs, you can actually keep your minions alive pretty steadily, except for some nasty affixes on High Nightmare, where the AoE damage is just out of control. Things like Death Pulse or Fire Enchanted in Nightmare 65+, it gets pretty tough after that. With this build, we're also set up to gain essence from grabbing Blood Orbs and heal our minions and heal us and fortify us. And on top of that, we're going to run a wand plus lucky hit chance on all available slots. And what this does for us is we have a lucky hit chance to get a massive amount of fortify, which is going to keep us tanky, as well as keep us dealing high damage with overpower. And we also are going to run on gloves and offhand. There is an extra lucky hit that you can run that will cause lucky hit chance to heal. And so with how often you're hitting through all of your Blood Surge Novas, the Blood Bathed Legendary that causes you to pulse twice with every Blood Surge, if you get a mob pack of 4 or higher, your health will constantly be shooting up. Your fortify will constantly be shooting up. The tankiness on this build is absolutely nuts. And then if we run attack reset on boots and we gather orbs over and over, we reset our essence all the way up to full. We can keep pulsing and pulsing and pulsing. We heal our minions and we keep healing through all of that, which makes this whole build very self-sustainable. We're also going to run the Embalmer Legendary, which means that anytime we consume a corpse, we have a chance to spawn a blood orb. We're also going to run blood orbs on your corpse tendril, since vulnerable does very little for this build, shockingly enough. And so as you're moving around, proccing attack speed, healing yourself, keeping yourself alive, what you want to be doing is when you proc high amounts of attack speed, go and spam Raise Skeleton on all the corpses that you can, giving the buff to your minions, but also spawning blood orbs and giving your minions healing as well. So you stack up a bunch of healing, spawn a bunch of blood orbs, go around, collect the blood orbs, spam Blood Surge till you're empty. Do the same thing. High attack speed allows us to spam and summon skeletons, spawn blood orbs, collect blood orbs, resets your essence, you spam Blood Surge, and you just keep cycling and cycling and cycling through that. And it's awesome too because we have a taunt on the golem, which allows us to get through some really nasty mobs, and overall the damage is really high, and also it's a very tanky build, which is cool. Down below in the description, as well as on the build sheet online and all of my posts, you'll find my one sheet for this build. I started working on this format so that people can have something to reference when they're making it. It has the legendaries or uniques for every slot, the stat priority that you're looking for, the best in slot stats that you can get for that, as well as all of the gems and gem options that you have, the best elixirs, the best incenses to run, bad sigil affixes to avoid that will ruin this build if you run them on sigils, as well as some general notes around rotation and gameplay. So you'll find this down below in the description, as well as the d4builds.gg full build with all of the stats, the build, the skill tree, and the Paragon as well, if you're looking for all that for reference. And we'll go through all of these details as we go through the guide. So let's begin with the skill tree, the skill build, and we'll walk through all the abilities and the modifiers and why these are all important for the build that we have. For Builder, we're going to pick up Hemorrhage. This has a couple really nice additives to it. This one is very useful when you get into a single target situation. You don't have as many blood orbs spawning, which means you can't reset your essence to full. And it also has a really nice interaction with blood orbs. So we use this to get a little bit of extra damage out and essence generation when we're against a single boss and there's no corpses or blood orbs to deal with. It makes that situation feel better. But also, enhanced hemorrhage means that after you pick up a blood orb, your next hemorrhage will hit an AoE. And so what we do while we're going through our rotation is every time we get enhanced hemorrhage, which is after picking up a blood orb, we want a one-tap hemorrhage. And that will hit all enemies in an area with hemorrhage, giving you essence per enemy hit, and proccing the chance to spawn a blood orb, the 20% chance. So picking up a blood orb, if you have a high density and you hit a whole group of mobs with hemorrhage, you'll get a bunch of essence, and you'll also spawn a couple blood orbs, which then you can pick up a blood orb, hemorrhage again, do AoE, get essence, and spawn more blood orbs. So you can kind of keep spawning blood orbs as you do it. We're gonna go down into the core tree and we're gonna pick up Blood Surge. As I've talked about before in overpower builds, the damage of the ability has no impact on the overpower damage at all. And so when you run overpower builds, you can actually leave your vessel of delivery for overpower at level 1 if you can spend those points elsewhere. And in this case, we can. So we're gonna get Blood Surge level 1. It will lower the damage. This damage here doesn't even affect the Deathspeaker amulet damage either. So we just need Blood Surge available to deliver our overpower. Then we're gonna get the heal, which is nice. And when you draw from 4 or more enemies, you also get even more HP, which makes this a tankier build than even before. And lastly, we're gonna get Paranormal Blood Surge. What this means is that when you damage an enemy with Blood Surge while you're above 80% health, you gain 1 stack. After 5 stacks, your next Blood Surge overpowers. So you do 5 Blood Surges, your 6th Blood Surge will guarantee overpower, and so will every other Blood Surge Nova that comes off your minions. So if you have everything stacked together, you get serious damage output from that. It's important to note that you have to be healthy for this. You have to be above 80% health, and you also have to hit somebody. You can actually deliver overpower hits across the room. If you Blood Surge, your minions will too, and then that will cause an overpower. But you won't get the guaranteed overpower stacks unless your Blood Surge hits an enemy and damages them. So keep that in mind. For the packs where you have to stand farther away because they're dangerous, you may want to kind of pop in, get some Blood Surge and step out, or stack up together and get lots of Blood Surge. But we get lots of healing from it and guaranteed overpowers, which we like. We're going to pick up Unliving Energy so that we can pick up Imperfectly Balanced. As it stands right now, the 15% increased damage to core skills on Imperfectly Balanced, scales their overpower damage. This is the only core skill percent in the entire game that for some reason scales overpower damage. And so while that is the case, we're going to take advantage of it. So this 15% damage will scale your overpower hit. I don't know if this is intended or not. So just, in the future, if they end up adjusting this or whatever, just be mindful. But as of right now, this will scale your overpower, and it's a global final value scaler. All of your overpower gets 15% better at the very end calculation. It's super good. We also want Hued Flesh. We have high amounts of lucky hit in this build. We want to spawn a lot of corpses. This keeps our minions healthy. We can heal them, we can buff them, and it allows us to spawn blood orbs, which means we can generate essence and keep the build going. We come down here and we pick up Blood Mist. If you're doing Nightmare 50 and below, or you're just doing world content and content in groups, you may not need Blood Mist. The main reason Blood Mist is in this build is because when you go higher than Nightmare 50, the crowd control gets completely out of control, and the only option that Necromancer has outside of running one, classic Gnostic General Legendary that gives Unstoppable every 20 seconds with a condition is Blood Mist. Without Blood Mist in your build, pushing past Nightmare 50 becomes almost impossible, because if you get frozen inside of a bad, you die. If you get locked inside of something, you die. If you get slowed and you can't avoid a hit, you die. Blood Mist allows us to circumvent that because we can become immune to avoid hits. We can also get out of CCs. Blood Mist is usable while you're in crowd control, and it gives us some nice options for positioning and avoidance. Without Blood Mist, it becomes very hard to push High Nightmare on Necromancer, and so unfortunately, we have to put this in the build, but it's not for naught, because it means that when we overpower, we can reset the cooldown on Blood Mist, and Blood Mist leaves behind a corpse, which allows us to generate more blood orbs. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It's actually pretty good. I would have liked to spend these points elsewhere, and I really tried to work this out of the build, but if you're going to push High Nightmare as it stands right now until we get some buffs or changes, you cannot push High Nightmare without Blood Mist, at least in my opinion. Skeletal Warrior Mastery is nice. This gives us Skeletal Warrior health. Blood Surge's overpower from Deathspeaker does not scale with minion damage, so we don't care about the damage. We just care about keeping our minions alive. Because we're going to be consuming corpses with Raised Skeleton, each one we consume that buffs our minions, heals us, and spawns blood orbs will also give us 6 essence with Grim Harvest, which is nice. We come down into the Curse skill tree and we pick up the 9% damage reduction, as well as the 6% close damage, which for Blood Surge, we're always going to be close anyways. And we also need the maximum life for skeletal mages to keep them alive against very dangerous enemies that do lots of damage. We're going to come down here and we're going to pick up Corpse Tendrils, one of the best skills in the Necromancer kit. Super strong. And we're actually not going to go for the ever-famous Vulnerable from Corpse Tendrils, because we get a lot more value out of going up and getting chance to spawn blood orbs. Again, blood orbs fortify us, they heal our minions, they proc other benefits, and they also will give us a way to maintain our HP to get high values of our overpowers, right? Overpower falls apart if you have low HP and no fortify. And so while, yes, you can get a small amount of vulnerable scaling that does affect additively with overpower, it's much better to be maintaining high HP, especially in dangerous situations. And the blood orbs also give us essence, which means we can spam more blood orbs, or spam more blood surges, which gives us more value overall. You want to run Corpse Tendrils at least level 1, and then you can put Corpse Tendrils on your boots, which means it lowers the cooldown even more. If you have cooldown reduction on your helm and your offhand, you'll be able to get Corpse Tendrils down to a very manageable cooldown. Right now, I have it down to 6.5 seconds, which means that's going to spawn a boatload of orbs. It's going to pull enemies in, which means we can stack on top of them for tons of Blood Surge damage. And remember, every enemy that's stacked together for Blood Surge gives us more healing, more fortify, and tons of survivability, so we need that. We're going to pick up all of the blood passives in the blood tree. Gruesome Mending gives us more healing when we're low, helps us get back to full. The transfusion is huge because every time we pick up a blood orb, 45% of that healing gets given to our minions. When we have increased healing received and increased blood orb healing, this also goes to our minions, so we can be healing our minions constantly, keeping them alive for even the most dangerous situations. Coalesce Blood is amazing. While healthy, your blood skills deal 24% multiplicative increased damage, and Tides of Blood is also amazing. It gives up to 30% bonus overpower damage. if you're healthy. And lastly, Drain Vitality. This is the lucky hit where we have a 25% chance to fortify you for 8% of base life. Every time we hit, we have a chance to lucky hit for every target hit. And also, after testing the Blood-Bathed Legendary that causes your Blood Surge to proc twice, so it pulses and then pulses again, the second hit can also trigger lucky hit. So not only are we healing and gaining Fortify from the first hit, we're also getting it from the second hit, and we're also fortifying from that lucky hit, which makes us super tanky across the board. We're gonna come down here, we're gonna pick up Golem Mastery. Again, Golem damage won't affect our overpower, but it will keep our Golem alive, and that's very important. We also want the Skeletal Priest healing. Every 5 seconds, they get 60% of their max life. Combine this with the healing that we normally get from Raised Skeleton, and of course, the healing that we get from Blood Orbs keeps your minions going through difficult content. Also, your minions can't lose more than 30% of their max life from a single damage instance, which means they're most likely to die from AoE affixes than to be hit by something and killed. So Fire Enchanted seems to be the most dangerous for minions, but single target hits will never one-shot them, which is really nice. Then we have Inspiring Leader. This one's really awesome. After you've been healthy for 4 seconds, you and your minions gain attack speed. We primarily use this for our attack speed, because remember, the faster we attack, the more we heal, the more we fortify, and also every 5 blood surges is a guaranteed overpower. So attack speed then gives us more overpowers, which gives us significantly more damage in the build overall. And lastly, we're gonna pick up Rathma's Vigor. Increases your max life by 10%, which affects your overpower damage and your survivability. And then after being healthy for 15 seconds, your next blood skill overpowers. So combine high attack speed with every 5 blood surges causing a guaranteed overpower with Rathma's Vigor, which means that you can be overpowering constantly, doing crazy amounts of damage and keeping yourself alive. Now let's talk about gear and stats. And you can tell by my inventory, I have just been swapping things out, changing stats, re-rolling, testing everything possible to get this build to work and to make sure that when I deliver you guys a build, it's pretty robust and has been through its throws and paces to get everything just right. So because we are very lucky hit oriented, we're going to be running with a wand main hand for a lucky hit chance. Remember, overpower damage is the big one here, and on the sheet, I'll be giving you damage to stunned, damage to close, and willpower. Willpower is huge for this build because not only does it give us resource generation, healing received, which means that we get more value from our legendaries, but it also gives us overpower damage. So willpower is the GOAT when it comes to this. Any item that can roll willpower, if you see it on there, don't get bummed out. Main stat is actually pretty good for this build. For Legendary, we're going to run with Blood Bathed. This makes the Nova pulse again. And remember, that can proc Lucky Hit, which is huge. For Offhand, you have 2 choices. If you want the more aggressive choice, you go for a Focus. This is going to have you cooldown reduction. You have some offensive stats, and you can put an offensive Legendary onto your Offhand, which is really big. That is super useful. But if you run into situations where you're having trouble surviving in High Nightmare, you can swap the Focus out for a Shield. This will allow you to run a defensive legendary, something like Might for defense, Protector for barrier, or you can even run extra skeletal mages if you want as well. And it has damage reduction and max life on it, which makes you even tankier, which is pretty nice. But you will lose some of the offensive capability of your Focus. Now, the stats here, I don't have perfect stats on these. Just use the build sheet that I have for you for the stat priority. The big thing that you want to know about your Offhand and your gloves is the chance to, the lucky hit, up to a 5% chance to heal amount of life. And you can see fully upgraded on gloves, 5% chance to heal for 1,115, 5% chance to heal for 1,467 at max roll. Remember, we're pulsing constantly. Our first hit, our second hit, and our other hits can all proc Lucky Hit. So this is going off all the time. We're shooting up in HP. We're shooting up in Fortify. It's a super tanky build, which is great for Overpower because our damage is equal to our current health plus our Fortify. So we want to be up at high values for that in general. And again, if you run Shield, you can work in extra mages in this. I actually found that it was better to only have the 2 extra warriors in this build because they're always in melee range and the mages are sometimes out of range for the AoE, but keep in mind with the pulse, you'll be hitting the entire room usually. I just found it more effective to have warriors and then have something else for a defensive or an offensive legendary without scaling up the mages. But if you do decide to go for more mages, you can get more Blood Novas, which is more damage overall. For the legs, we want to pick up the Embalmer Legendary. This means that when we consume a corpse, we spawn blood orbs. Those blood orbs we know have crazy effects on us overall, so we love having that. For gloves, I would get Rathma's Chosen. After overpowering, you gain 50% attack speed for 4 seconds. This allows you to proc through all 5 of those blood surges to get that free overpower, as well as giving you tons and tons of healing and survivability. The more blood surges, the more tanky you are, the faster you get to your guaranteed overpower, which is really, really good. Another option is also running Accelerating if you like. This gives you attack speed on crit. Even with low crit, you're hitting so often that you will still proc the duration of Accelerating very, very easily. For chest, we want Disobedience. This one is one of the best defensives in the game, and as long as you can hit 100 times in 4 seconds, you can actually get full value out of this. And you can see I don't even have a max roll on this, but it is still insanely strong. Very, very good. And then for Helm, you want Hardened Bones. This gives you 20% damage reduction for your minions as long as you have 7 or more, which we definitely do. For the amulet, of course, we're running Death Speaker. You want as best to roll on this as you can. And remember, for the unique items, the stats that come with them are locked. I would have loved to have damage reduction on amulet, but it's not possible. Overpower damage is pretty good. Summoning skill damage and blood skill damage are not the best for overpower, but it still works. And of course, Coalesced Blood is insanely, insanely strong. You can see I only have a rolled +1 on this. This could be a +3, which gives you way more damage on that as well. We also want, for rings, we want Potent Blood. While at full life, blood orbs grant essence. This gives you a large amount of essence at max roll. And you also want to make sure that you're at max life. So I usually pop a potion before I gather the blood orbs so that I can make sure that I get some essence out of the orbs. But usually there's so many orbs on the ground, you'll be just fine. And then for the other option, I like running Untimely Death. This gives us the option of giving scaled overpower for healing. And I found that even with fast proccing overpowers, we're healing so goddamn much that we're able to fully stack this in between each overpower as long as we're aggressively blood surging. For stats, overpower damage is primary. We want to get that as much as we can. Max life gives us a lot of options for keeping ourselves alive, but also scaling our overpower damage. And remember, your overpower damage is based on your current life plus your current fortify, and your max fortify is equal to your max life. More max life means more current life. It means more current fortify, means more overpower. The more max life you have, the more damage that you deal with your overpower. Super good. For the chest, the pants, we have to get damage reduction on these if we're going to survive any difficult content. And you also want damage reduction while fortified on these. There's not really much choice there. If you want to push past Nightmare 50, you will just die if you don't have enough damage reduction, which is unfortunate. Lucky hit, max life, overpower, and blood orb healing on your rings. Remember, the blood orb healing translates into healing for your minions. And the more healing you get from the blood orbs, the more likely you are to get essence from blood orbs as well, which is super nice, super good. We love getting willpower, gives us damage and healing and resource generation. And make sure that you get lucky hit, chance to heal on gloves and offhand, because this actually goes a long way with how much lucky hit. I mean, we have lucky hit on, we can get lucky hit on focus. We can get lucky hit on our main weapon with a wand, on our gloves, on our 2 rings. We get insanely high lucky hit, which means that we're constantly healing, especially if you run it on both gloves and your offhand there. When it comes to boots, I would run either attacks reset your evade cooldown or your multiple evades. I think attacks reset cooldown is better for this build because you hit so frequently. You'll be able to dash in. So what I do is I hold down the left click to move and I spam raise skeleton as I'm going around. So I'm always consuming, buffing, healing, and creating orbs. And then I spam blood surge as it gets close to full. And then as if I get to about half essence, I'll press space to evade over to the next blood orb. When I collect the blood orb, I get essence, I heal, I reset, I attack a couple times with blood surge, I spam a couple corpses for raised skeleton, spawns more orbs, and then I dash again. And you're just constantly just darting around like the Flash, collecting blood orbs, spamming, exploding, moving around, which you'll see in the gameplay. Looking at the Paragon board, there's a couple things to know about this that are really important. I think this is actually the most optimized Paragon board. There are some options here that you might want to play around with, and there's some glyphs that you can swap out based on your preference. But Keep in mind that percent max life gives us more fortify, it gives us more overpower damage, and keeps us alive longer, so we like picking that up. Always try to grab that if you're doing an overpower build. We also like running Blood Drinker. This is one of the most important glyphs in this build. This makes it so that you fortify yourself for like 7% of your max life every time you pick up a Blood Orb. So the Blood Orb heals you. It also will put you over max life and give you essence. It heals your minions, and with this glyph, it fortifies you. So each Blood Orb is constantly flooding you with survivability using the Blood Drinker glyph. The other one you want to pick up, of course, is going to be Dominate. I found that the Blood Begets Blood board is the best for this. You can actually get a serious amount of overpower damage from this. This gives you overpower damage, and when you overpower an enemy, they take increased damage from you, which is super big. And then you want to pop over into Cult Leader. I like having it on the left here from Blood Begets. Keep in mind, the further the board is from the starting board, the higher cost the bonus requirements will be. And so where you put your boards matters a lot. But I like having Cult Leader here for a couple reasons. One is we can come over here and we get damage reduction for minions. This is massive. It gives us a lot of value. But what's great about this is if you run Dead Razor here, it increases the Paragon node value within range to bonus minion damage and damage reduction. So when you have this Paragon board activated and you have it with that glyph over on the side, you will actually get a large amount of damage reduction for your minions, and you can scale that up and keep your minions alive. The more you have in here, the better. So this is a perfect way to just jut in from the right side here with the glyph right there on Cult Leader. Put in Dead Razor, get that minion damage reduction. It'll keep them alive, and they'll thank you for it. Above Blood Begets, we want to put Blood Bath because it has one of the best legendary nodes for overpower builds in the game. Bloodbath, attacks that are guaranteed to overpower deal 50% increased overpower damage. And this is a final calculation multiplicative scaler. This is actually insane. You will very easily, if you're playing the build and you see an overpower damage that's like 60% of normal damage and then an overpower that's much higher, it's because the one that was much higher was a guaranteed overpower, and it's because of this node. You want to get this node as soon as possible. It is so powerful. It makes those guaranteed overpowers through Rathma's Vigor or through every 6 of your Blood Surges do significantly more damage. So you want this node. This makes the build skyrocket for damage output. And then we also want to get Gravekeeper here. This gives us damage for close corpses. You can also run Territorial. You can also run options for Control or Corporeal if you'd like, which gives you those things here. But I like having the damage when there's a lot of corpses nearby, and it scales up rare nodes, which means that we can get more healing received, we can get more willpower, and we can get more damage while fortified as well. We're gonna pop over into Hulking Monstrosity. I would do this probably as the last board that you do. We get HP for the Golem, we get damage while Golem is active, which is nice, and we get armor while Golem is active, which is nice. And then here we want to put Territorial. This is one of my favorite nodes to work in for Blood Surge because it's close target damage, but mainly because you get damage reduction against close enemies. We want to suck up as much damage reduction as we can to push higher and higher sigils to get that done. Plus we get Golem armor. We get a little bit of this extra bit here, so we can get those there. Golem damage isn't the best thing in the world, but it's certainly something that you can pick up, and we get the extra dexterity so that we can proc the close target damage, which is nice. Now that we know everything about the build, let's talk through the gameplay one more time so we can lock that in. You want to be proccing Blood Surge often because it will hit anyone that's standing near you or near your minions. You can proc it when you're away from a target because the minions will still hit. We want to be using attack speed as much as we can to constantly be healing and fortifying and working our way up to the guaranteed overpower for Blood Surge. When you walk into a new room of dangerous mobs, proc the Golem Taunt, because that Golem Taunt will keep the targets hitting him instead of you. By default, enemies will always try to kill you instead of your minions. Then you want to spend your essence to kill targets and doing Blood Surge as much as you can. And then when you drop low on essence, you want to use the overpower attack speed you got from Rathma's Chosen to quickly spam Raised Skeleton on every corpse that you can see on the screen. Make sure you pop all of them because not only will it heal your minions, but it will also consume the corpse, spawn a Blood Orb. Blood Orbs are the lifeblood of this build, and you want to work your way through that. If Corpse Tendrils is off cooldown, use it every time it's available. It'll pull minions in, and even when it doesn't, it'll still spawn Blood Orbs for you. If you have high density, it'll give you a ton of Blood Orbs on screen, which will give you very easy survivability and essence generation. So if you're running low on essence, it means you're not collecting blood orbs enough. If your build is close to complete, all you have to do when this is fully put together is, like I said, hold down left click if you're on PC, spam Blood Surge, spam Raise Skeleton, and spam your evade. And you'll be able to dart around the fight constantly, getting enough blood orbs, spawning enough blood orbs. If you have high attack speed, you can raise skeletons constantly and swap between that and doing Blood Surge. And you're basically just like a Beyblade, just darting around, blood surging, collecting orbs, spawning orbs, and moving around, dealing tons of damage, and your minions are proccing the overpower as well. Remember to maintain high HP and high fortify. It affects your damage, your survivability, and your ability to stack up guaranteed overpowers as well. And another thing I'll note is that there is an over-under on how aggressive you need to be with the build. Remember that if you aren't attacking enough, you're not stacking up your disobedience, you're not proccing enough healing, you're not proccing enough fortify. So you do need to be getting in there and spamming and attacking as much as you can. You can see in hard content how much my HP changes just when I'm attacking and collecting blood orbs. So if you're playing passively and you're struggling with the build, it could just be that you just need to be more aggressive, stack up that disobedience by hitting, get all those procs and lucky hits to heal you and keep you alive. And that will be your success metric. And that's the Bloodspeaker Necro. It's a ton of fun. It's actually my favorite one to listen to now. The sound effects of the blood surges going off and all the raised skeletons going off really rapidly is super satisfying and very tactile, which is fun, and hopefully you have a lot of fun with it as well. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help boost the video, and I will see you guys on my live stream if you have any questions or comments. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.